Hello everyone, and this tutorial this is more of an update video. Okay, so the idea here is to help you adapt older Houdini tutorials to the new versions. Primarily, I'm making this video for all of my customers. Okay, so all the people who have purchased my trainings from my website, and I've been recording commercial training since like Houdini 13. Okay, so since then, a lot of core nodes have changed. Okay, now the interesting thing is that a lot of Houdini is still very much the same. Like I started Houdini with version 8, okay, and I can still see similarities. Like that, the core procedural functionality has not changed. But there are a lot of core nodes that have kind of gotten updated or modified or changed completely, which is why it gets confusing to adapt, older trainings to new versions. Now, for me to try and re-record all of my old trainings is almost an impossible task. Okay, because I'd have to re-record, I think, about 200 videos or something like that. Okay, well, not 200, but at least like 150, a lot of them. But so instead what I did was I kind of went through all the various emails that I've gotten from my customers over the years, and I figured out where most people get stuck. And the idea was that I'm going to record this one video where I'm going to try and cover as many of those topics as possible. So if you purchase any of my older trainings, you should be able to see this one video and be able to adapt the older training to the new versions. Now, along with that, there are other videos that I've also recorded that are free on YouTube, which I've never, I guess my mistake was that I should have emailed them to all of my customers. Okay, like the links to those. But I will mention them in this video, and I'm also going to email this video to the link of this video to all of my customers, so that you get so you can watch this and hopefully this will help you out. Okay, so to get started, the one big change or the one big place where people 100% get stuck is the old point node. Okay, now the old point node was there till I believe Houdini 14 or 15. Okay, and it's a major node. Okay, so it got used everywhere. And even though I never did overly complex things with it, but it is something that gets used. And the other thing is that it uses variables, right? It wasn't using vex. So vex is also something that came in Houdini 14 and 15. Okay, like the wrangle node specifically. Okay, so everything was $tx, $ty, $tz and stuff like that. Okay, now you can't even find the old point node anymore. Okay, it was there in Houdini till version 17 and now it's not there. So I actually opened up my old file to find the point node so that I could show it to you. The first big thing is adapting whatever I was doing with the point node to the new version. So the first and foremost thing is, instead of the point node, you now just use attribute wrangle. Okay, even though the Houdini help says that you should use the attribute expression node and there is also a new point node, don't use any of it. Okay, just stick to attribute wrangle. That does everything for you. Now, I'm going to cover some of the basic examples that I have always covered. The funny thing is, I don't do very complex things. Okay, most of the stuff I do is very simple. I keep repeating the same things over and over again with all of my trainings. So one of the places where the point node, where I used to use the point node a lot, is to essentially color or give ramps to objects in a particular axis or over points. So with this one, I'm using $BBY, which is I'm doing a bounding box. Okay, if I look at the curve, see, this is there's a ramp going from white to black in the y-axis. Okay, because it's doing BBY. So the first thing is how do you do something like that? Okay, this is just going to be examples. So I don't really have a structure to this, but I'm just going to, firstly we'll go through the point node and then we'll cover other stuff. So let's say if I just I'll make a sphere and I'll make it polygon. So you do get a new point node, but as I said, don't use it. Okay, it's a ready-made thing, but it doesn't matter. It's actually just, I'm very sure if I jump inside it, I'm going to find an attribute warp in there. Okay, just use the wrangle node, makes life easy. So while we're looking at the wrangle node, make sure that if you buy any of my old trainings, okay, just make sure that you watch my intro to Vex video, okay, because this was also, I created this to help people move from the old point node to the wrangle node, and this covers a lot of topics and my specific techniques that I use on like a regular basis. Okay, so make sure you watch this. Okay, so let's say you want to color this using a bounding box. So the simplest way to do it is there's actually like a ready-made node. So if you click on this arrow over here, you'll get color from bounding box, and there you go. Okay, so the code is this, it's relative b box. 0 is, this is 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, not 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the first input is 0 and you're using the position. Okay, now if you want to color it just in the y-axis, you can do a p dot y. Okay, so this will give you p dot y. Okay, so which is the y-axis. And then you can do p dot x or you can do p dot z. Okay, so you can go in any axis that you want. So this is like a really simple way to do it. Now, if you want, there is another way to do this, which is if you have the lab tools from side effects, then you can take, they have like a ready-made gradient node. Okay, so you can take the lab color gradient, turn on CD and just plug it in, and it automatically gives you like a y-axis. And it also gives you a ramp, so it's easy to control. Okay, now if I want to do the same thing to a line, okay, now there are a bunch of ways to do this. Okay, now the problem with doing gradient or ramps on a line is that lines are not always straight. So there is one standard method that I used to use every single time, which is doing $pt divided by $npt. Like if you've used my older trainings, you'll find this everywhere. Now, this is the old variable method. So if you want to adapt it, it's like at pt num divided by at numpt. Okay, this is the newer method. This is like the Vex code. Okay, now a simple tip, how do you know where these functions are? If you take an attribute warp and you jump in, then you will find all of it over here. So if you zoom in, you'll see like there's pt num, there's numpt, like this is how you type it. Put an at in the front, add before it, and like this is exactly, even like you have to remember the capitals and smalls as well, right? So the N is capital and the T is capital. So all of this, so this is where your Vex code comes from. But the problem here with doing this is that both of these are integers. Okay, so if you divide one integer by another integer, you're still going to get an integer, and we need it to be like in decimal places. So what you want to do is you want to convert one of these to a float. So like that. Okay, so it will be float at pt num divided by numpt. So if I just take this and just to sort of show you, what I can do is I can take a wrangle and let's create like a custom attribute. So I'll do like, let's say f at, let's call it fade, and then we'll do float of at pt num divided by at numpt. Okay, and this is fine. And then what I can do is, if you want to visualize this, just take a color node and I can do ramp from attribute and we'll pick up fade, and there you go. Okay, so you can pretty easily just visualize that. Now this is one way of doing it, and then the nice thing about this is because it is based on point numbers and not really on the height of the object. Yeah, if I put in a point jitter or something in the middle, it will still work. See. Okay, so this doesn't matter. Now another way of doing this, which is actually a lot simpler, is you can use the curve view function. Okay, so you don't need to do anything fancy over here like a float of pt num divided by numpt. Okay, what you can do is I can just take a resample node. Now the resample node sort of resamples a curve, like based on what values you give. But what you can do is, if you don't want to resample it, it just has an option to calculate curve view. So the curve view calculates like the length of the curve, and it gives you like decimal values rising from like 0 to 1. And all I can do is if I just turn on curve view attribute, and if I plug it into color, and just change this to curve view, and that's it. So this works like 100% every single time. You don't even need to do this attribute wrangle stuff. And then you can do the same thing for like anything you want. So I can, like, let's say I put in another wrangle in the middle, and if you want to create like a ramp or something, so let's say if I want to control p scale based on curve view, okay, so I can do at p scale is equal to ch ramp, okay, and let's call it scale, comma, at curve view. And if I take, let's say if I take a sphere and we can copy it, okay, and the reason it's not showing up is because we need to generate the ramp. So just click on the plus over here, and there you go. Okay, so you can just like, move this down and probably move this up a little bit. Yeah, see. So the point being, like, whatever you were doing with the old point node, now it is all just doing it in wrangle. Okay. Now another thing to remember, okay, is none of my trainings are for beginners. Okay. So if you are an absolute beginner, watch the intro videos that I've made on YouTube. Like, those are free. I have stuff on Vimeo as well. Like, go watch the intro stuff on Houdini on the Side Effects website, and then you can think of buying my training. So don't buy it if you're not good with Houdini. Like, I started Houdini like 2 days ago. Don't buy my trainings. It will be a really bad idea. Make sure you have some, like, here's the other thing. You don't need to be like an expert at Houdini to know my trainings. Okay, my trainings aren't that overly complex. They're mostly simple enough, but you need to have a functioning knowledge of Houdini, right? Like, you need to know how the basic system works. You need to know like a little bit of Vex and a little bit of how the procedural system works. So if you know that much, even if I would say if you've gone through my basic training videos, the free ones, you should be able to follow my trainings. Okay, but yeah, don't come to it with like zero knowledge. It'll be a disaster. Okay, so that being said, let's do one thing. Okay, I'm going to recreate a little bit of the rocket ship training. So the rocket ship video, like, the first thing I did here was to give it a shape. Okay, like, there's a curve here and I'm giving it a shape. Okay, like, this is the shape of the rocket. So the question would be, how do you go about doing this? Okay, so this is like when I did it in the earlier version, I gave it like a color in the y-axis, and then I took like an attribute warp and, So I took an attribute warp and then I primarily did a displacement. Okay, so it's not very straightforward. So I gave it a y color, and I also gave it normals in the x-axis, so the normals were facing this way. And then I'm just using like this shape and displacement. So this is how the shape is controlled. So how do you go about doing this in the new version? Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to recreate some of the lessons from my older videos just to give you a general idea of how things can be adapted. Okay, so where do we start? So what we want a shape like that. Pretty simple. So what I can do is, firstly, we'll resample this. So we'll use the curve view. Okay, like, let's call this curve view. Again, make sure that you watch the intro to Vex video, because all of this is covered in like great details in here. Okay, like how to create the ramps, what are the basic functions, all of that stuff. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to modify it in the x-axis. Okay, so I just want the curves to move. I just want the points to move in the x-axis. So what I can do is I can just take a wrangle node, and I can just directly come in here and say at p dot x, okay, is equal to, let's do a ramp. So I'll do ch ramp, and we'll call it shape, and I'll do at curve view, and then we'll multiply it additionally with like an additional value just to control how much we want it to move out. Okay, so we'll call it move, and that's pretty much it. Okay, like I'll get the move value to 1 for now. See, so you'll get this. And then I can just take this and set it to B-spline and like B-spline. And then I can just shape it up. So I can just take this and move it out like that. And I can take that and move it in. Yeah, and then you can like control the shape of this. Okay. And then I can like, let's do one thing. Let's turn this into a NURBS curve. Okay. Or actually, let's keep it to polygon. We'll convert it to NURBS later. Okay, because it's sort of like modifying the shape. So what I can do is I can take a convert, because eventually it all needed to be, you know, in a NURBS shape. So I'm going to take a convert and convert this to NURBS curve. Okay, so there you go. So now you're a NURBS curve. And then I can just do a revolve. And in the revolve, make sure primitive type is kept to NURBS surface, and then we can plug it in, and there we go. Okay, now it's coming reversed, so just turn on reverse cross sections, and that's it. So what was earlier about like 2 or 3 nodes, now you can do it like this. So yeah, so things have changed, but like the ramps and stuff remain the same. Like those haven't really changed at all. Okay. Okay, so this is as far as, you know, basic stuff is concerned about how to sort of shape curves and how to also color curves or objects. Okay, now another thing also that has changed is aligning objects to normals. Okay, now earlier you had to activate normals in the point SOP in order for the object to have normals, so that when you copy stuff onto them, they would align to them. Okay, like by default, the objects wouldn't have normals, so everything would just come standing straight. That doesn't need to be done anymore. Okay, like if I just take a sphere, okay, like just to check this, if I take a sphere and I do a polygon, and let's say I'll create a box, and I'll do a copy to points. So what, see, there you go. So you can see like they are already aligning to this, even though this object does not have any normals. Okay, so what's happening is, I think internally it, it has this where it internally generates. It says transform using target point orientations. If there are no normals, I think it automatically generates. See, transform using implicit target point normals if no point n attribute is available. Okay, so it sort of automatically generates it for you, so you don't need to worry about that. Of course, the one thing to remember about this is that it has to be a piece of geometry. Okay, like if I take an add node in the middle and I remove the geometry altogether and it's only points, then it doesn't work. So in that case, you will have to have actual normals on it for this to work. Okay, so with the older method, it used to be like you come to the point node and there would be normals, and you would say add normals, and it would be like nx, ny, and z. Now what you can do is, I can just take a wrangle node here and just do like at n, like before you delete the geometry, don't do it after. Okay, at n is equal to at n, and there you go. So what happens is this, like if you come to this point and you turn on normals, you'll get something like this, which is like, these are like, it's just showing you, but they don't really exist. But when you activate the normals, they'll turn blue like that. Okay, so now even though you delete the geometry, the normals will still remain on the points and will be able to align to that. So you don't need to do it, but if it does cause problems, this is how you activate them. Okay. When it comes to curves, okay, so let's say if I take a line again, and I'll just sort of make it longer and give it some points. We'll do a point jitter again. So I don't want it to move in the y-axis. Okay, and then I'll do a resample, and I want to make this line smooth. So just take a resample and treat polygons as 2 subdivision curve. Okay, so we'll get this. Now, what if you want to align objects along this? Okay, so if I take a copy to points, and let's say if I just take this guy and plug it in here, like this, for the curves it doesn't work. Like this is just pointless. Okay, so earlier what you used to do, or what I used to do, is there's something called polyframe. Okay, so you take a polyframe and then you come into the tangent name and you type in n, and then this would generate, normals going in that direction. Like if you look at it now, you'll see normals. You don't need to do this anymore. Okay. So if you're looking at any of my older trainings and there's like the polyframe stuff, you can still use it because the node still exists. It's perfectly fine. But now we have a much better node. Okay, so what you can do is you can just take something called as orientation along curve. And if you want to see this node in like full action, I have a training called, hold on, let me just find it. So this one, the copy stamp and foreach 2, I make like a full flower in this. Okay, so this does like extensive usage of the orientation along curve node. So make sure, like if you want to, you should watch this one. Like it'll give you a lot of information about how this node works. But the orientation along curve node like generates this automatically. So you don't need to do anything. See, like without this and with this, it's pretty straightforward. But it does a whole bunch of stuff more than that. Okay, like one of the things it does very well is if you come to additional rotations, you can actually do rotations. Okay, so I can like roll this. Okay, you can also like twist it if you want. Okay, like I can take this and twist it. See, there you go. Okay, and then you can go in like roll, yaw, and like, we can do this. Let me try something. I'm going to take this and make it smaller in like some axis. Like, yeah, I think this is good. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now if you come in here and you start to sort of just adjust this, see, so you can sort of, move them around. So if you want to do like a spine or something, you can do that. And you can also, like if you come into pitch, then you can do the same thing. So you can spin it around, you can do incremental. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. This is a really powerful node. Okay, so if you haven't used this, use this a lot. Okay, like it does a ton of stuff for you. Okay. So even if you go back to something like my floating island stuff where I'm making like the vines, and you need to control, like firstly, if you want to control the scale, use the curve view, that will help you out. And then if you want to align like if you're doing IV and stuff like that, and you want to align stuff to it, you use this. Okay, it just makes life easy. Okay, now along with this, you have other nodes that have been around a while, but if you haven't seen them or because they weren't there in previous versions. So if you want to randomize p-scale and you want to randomize, so if you want to randomize like scaling or rotation or stuff like that, then you have the new nodes, like you have the randomize node and the noise node. Okay, so let's say if I just take a randomize. Now this part is definitely going to change in like a few days because Houdini 18.5 is adding like a new scatter and align node. So I think all of this stuff will be like inbuilt into that. So we hopefully won't need to do all of this, but I'm just doing this anyways. But what you can do is if I just put in like an attribute randomize, by default it randomizes color. But if I put it to something like say p-scale, so there you go. So you can just randomize scaling. And if you want it to be like noise based instead of just, per point randomization, I can take a randomize, attribute noise. And what I can do is I'll just bypass this. I'll set this to 1D and call it p-scale, and there you go. So now this is like a noise map, and I can remap the noise and I can say, 0 to 1, and then I can have it, like I can define the element size. And the cool part is you can also animate it. So if you turn on animated, and there you go. Okay, like I'll lower the roughness, and if I press play, see, there you go. Okay, if you wanted to move, like we can also offset it like that. So let's say if I come in here and what used to be like at T and like $T and $F, which was like time and frame, that is now like at frame and at time. Sorry, these are like capital. So capital, frame, and like, yeah. Okay, so if you want to like animate it based on frame number or time, then you can type that. So if I do like at time, and if I press play, so you'll have it sort of like moving upwards. Let's do like multiply by 5. Yeah, there you go. See, so now it's like moving up. Yeah, so you can do stuff like that. So this is a pretty nice node to have. So the point with this is a lot of stuff that I was doing earlier in like an attribute warp, like take a turbulent noise, plug it into P scale, and then use that. You can do all of that over here. Things easier. Okay, so we've covered till about here. Okay, now let's take a look at another file if I can. Okay, so this is from the motion graphics tutorial. Okay, and what I want to do is I have just like this basic grid which is sort of fading out. Okay, so this is using like the alpha, and we're also setting up the points based on like the point number. So how do we recreate this? I'm very sure this is also using like the point node somewhere. Yeah, there you go. So this is also using the point node. Okay. See, this is like $PT divided by $NPT. So let's recreate this. So there are a bunch of ways to do this now. Okay, so what I can do is, let's say if I'll start off with a box, and I'll just make it big enough. Copy parameter, paste relative reference, divided by 2. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take points from volume, so I can just fill this up. And let's make it slightly lesser. Let me do one thing. Let me not do this. I'll delete channel. This is 0. Okay. Okay, so I want the points to start from the center, so I can get like a radial sort of a fall off on this. So what I can do is I can just take a sort and I can set it to proximity from point. So the point goes into the center. Okay, like it's 0, 0, 0. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to set up a gradient based on the point numbers. Okay, so we're going to use the same like PT num divided by num PT. Okay, so I'm going to take an attribute wrangle and like let's plug this in. So I'll create an attribute, like a custom attribute. I'll call it f@fade. Okay, so I can use this for both. I can use it for color and I can also use it for the alpha. Okay, and we'll do float of at PT num divided by at num PT. Okay, so what I can do is you can actually do this like without having to type anything additional. I can just take a color here and I can use that attribute. So I can say ram from attribute fade, and there you go. Okay, and then you can flip it so you get that. And if you want to apply this to the alpha as well, I can do that in here. Okay, so what I can do is I can just come in here and I can say at alpha, the A is capital, is equal to, we'll generate a ramp. So we'll do ch ramp and we'll do, let's call this as fade. Okay, or yeah, let's call it fade. This is going to be a little confusing, but okay, let's call it fade, and then the function we'll use is the at fade. So at fade. Okay. So like this name can be anything because this is the name of your ramp. Okay, so we can call this like let's call it A. Okay, like if you really want to be very arbitrary with it. Okay, but you can do click, and then it's sort of fading the inside and going outwards. I can flip it, and there you go. So you can flip it like that. Okay, and then you can just adjust it if you want to. And if I come up here to the sort and adjust the point, so wherever you adjust it, see, there you go. So you can get a nice little fall off gradient like that. Like I can come in here and maybe just, there you go, see, so I can just control it. Okay. And then you can plug in the same thing into a P scale and control things along that thing as well. So that is fine. But yeah, if you're looking at the motion graphic stuff, again, a lot of it gets moved over to like the wrangle. Like I think that's pretty much applicable to every single old training. Like wherever you see the point SOP, just use attribute wrangle. Okay. All right, now let's move on to the group nodes. Okay, so nothing overly complex over there. I have a tutorial that you can watch. This one, group SOPs in Houdini 16, because Houdini 16 is where they modified the group nodes. Okay, like earlier it used to be one video, earlier it used to be one node, now it's like 6 different nodes. So if you look at the delete SOP, right, like this is what the group node used to be. Like there used to be like number, bounding box and normal and like all of that stuff. Something a little similar to this, and you had like a combine option in there as well. Okay, now all of it is separate. Okay, I'm not going to go through it because I've gone through it once before with that particular training, but I'll talk about some very specific things. Okay, so one of the things I used to do a lot is you want to select like the first point of your curve or the last point of your curve, and how do you go about doing that? So I did that in this video, but I did it wrong because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. So we'll just take a look at that once. Okay, because I do that a lot. Like you need that a fair bit. Okay, so if I take a line and I want to select either the top curve or the last one, so what you can do is I can take a group and you'll find something called group by range. Okay, so you take a group by range and it's actually very, very simple. Change this to points and then you can change the start to 1 and it'll get rid of the first point and just say invert range, and there you go. And similarly, if you want to select the end point, you can like take the end value to 1 and click invert range. If you want to select both, like the start and the end, you can take both of those to 1. See, so you'll get, and like as many as you keep is as many as it will select. Okay, if you want to, don't want to select the first and the last, and you want to select the middle, turn off invert range. So you'll get like the middle and you won't select the first and the last. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, another thing that I used to do is, let's say if you want to select like, random points. So let's say if I have this grid and I want to select points randomly. So let's say I want to select like 30% of the points. So what I can do is you can take a group expression and I can again set it to points. And I can do random of at ptnum less than 0.3. Okay, so 1 is like you're selecting 100%. Okay, so if I say less than 1, you'll select everything. Okay, if I say less than 0.5, you're selecting 50%. Okay, so if I say less than 0.3, it'll select 30%. Okay, if you want to randomize this, like you want to continuously change this, you can come into ptnum and add a value. Okay, so now every time this value changes, you'll get a different result. See, it's kind of like moving through it. Another thing you can do, if you don't want to do it here, to randomize it, you can take a sort node. So I can take a sort node and I can say point order is random. So let's say if I just copy something onto this, so we'll see it better. So I can take a copy to points. I can take a box and we'll copy to this. And we'll set copy to points to group 1. There you go. So if I take this and as I said, like if I just do like +5, if I start to move it, see, you'll see it change. Or if I come in here to the sort, like I set it to random, like if I do no change, you can do this, but if I set it to random and I keep shifting the seed value, so you'll get like, a random selection. So yeah, so when you want to select things randomly, you can do it this way. Fairly straightforward. Yeah, for like, again, for in-depth knowledge of the group nodes, you can, see this. Okay, now I'm going to come back. I'm going to come to this in the end, like copy stamping and for each. But let's take a look at Polyextrude. Okay, now the one thing that happened with Polyextrude is it changed in a big way. Okay, but it sort of broke a functionality that used to be there. Like if anybody has my old tea and cookies video, and I gave the spoon thickness based upon the color, and I used an extrude to do that. You can't do that anymore. Like the Polyextrude just does not work. Okay, so just to explain what I was doing. Okay, so I'm going to take another grid, and I'll show you a way to do it. Okay, like I don't know why it went away or why it's still not working, but it is the way it is. Okay, so we want to create a gradient going this way. I can just take a lab color gradient. Again, just install the lab tools. They're very useful. You get like 100 different things with it. So I can just take this and I'll set it to a custom attribute. We'll call it mask. and I'm going to set it to the Z axis. Now, if you want to visualize this, I can take a color node and I can visualize this. So I can take a color node here, set it to RAM from attribute and mask, and there you go. This is what we have. Now what I want to do is I want to apply this to my Polyextrude. Okay, so the way it works is you need to promote this to a primitive. So take an attribute promote and I can set it from point to primitive. We want mask. Okay, again, you won't see it, but it's happened. And then take a Polyextrude and give it a distance value. So you'll extrude it like this. Come into local control, set distance scale to mask, and nothing will happen. Why? Because if it's kept to connected components, it doesn't work. So it has to be kept to individual elements and then it works. Okay, so there you go. Okay, if I also do this same thing for the inset and I set it to mask and then I give it some inset value, see. So wherever the gradient is, that has more, and then as it fades out, it has less. If I come back to my color gradient and I make adjustments, see, like I'll bypass the color. We don't need it anymore. That was just for visualization, but there you go, see. So you can do stuff like this. But the problem is what I had done with that was that the whole thing would sort of, get a slope, but it doesn't work anymore. Like this is completely pointless. So what do you do? Okay, what you do is you don't do the attribute promote. Okay, like I'll get rid of this. I'll also get rid of the distance scale and the inset. What you want to do is we'll do output front, output side, output back. So we have like a solid box. Okay, get rid of the inset. We'll create groups for all three. Okay, so I'll do this. And then since the spoon was flat, like this primarily works for flat surfaces. But what I can do is I can just take this and I can take a wrangle and I can take the front, because that is where the gradient is, and I can do at p.y plus equal to at mask, and if I've done it right, this is what will happen. See, just the top area, because we're only affecting the front. Okay, so you can do this. So if anybody still has my old tea and cookies video, this is how you can do it. Okay. Yeah, so this is what you can do. So it's relatively simple. It was a very specific thing, but it doesn't work anymore. So there's no other way around it. All right, now let's come to the final thing that I want to cover, which is this is entirely my fault. Okay, so when I recorded the ornamental designs training, okay, like this one, and this uses copy stamping like everywhere. And by then copy stamping was already sort of deprecated, but I didn't like using the foreach method because it was slow. Like copy stamping was still a lot faster, like just processing wise. Foreach was slower. And I also just like I am not using foreach. Okay, but now I know how to use foreach. So first of all, like make sure that you watch both of these, like copy stamp and foreach, like 1 and 2. These will help you out a lot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate two things from the ornamental design using the foreach method, okay, instead of copy stamp. So anybody who has my ornamental design thing, this should be helpful to you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we'll do the leaf thing. Okay, so there's a leaf in here somewhere. There you go. Like not that one, but yeah, like there's a leaf in there. So we'll do a leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a line, and what I want to do is okay, so the leaf is pretty simple, right? Like it's a straight line, and then there are just, like curves copied onto this that sort of scale and rotate like that. Okay, like this is not that small. So they kind of, build a shape like this. The other way around, but I drew it wrong, so it's coming down like that. Okay, so how do you go about doing this? So in copy stamping, it was one way to do it, but we can do it with the for each method as well. Okay, so I'm going to take like a few points. What I want to do is let's take a line, and this will point in the x-axis, and we will do copy to points, but I'm going to put it in through a for each. So we'll do it from the beginning itself. So I'll take a for each point. I'll call it like for each A because I want a small name to type. So this comes in here, this goes in there, and then the line comes in here. So what we should have is this, just that. Now, first thing first, we wanted to scale down, and then we also wanted to sort of rotate. Okay, so what we can do is, firstly, I'll just put a resample here. I'll turn that off. We'll calculate curve view. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll take a wrangle, and I'm also going to put in a transform in here because we want to rotate it. Okay. So we want to rotate it in the Z axis. So firstly, I want to control the shape, the scaling of it. So I'm going to take at p scale is equal to ch ramp, and this will be called as shape, and we'll call it we'll do at curve view. And so this gives me my basic, like let's just do B spline and B spline. So this gives me my basic shape. So I have this, and then I can just, The second thing is I wanted to rotate. Okay, so I'm going to take this and we'll generate a custom attribute. We'll do f at rotate. It's going to be the same ramp here. So I'm going to copy this, do Control C, Control V. Except I'll just rename this to rotate. Now, in order to use these values for rotation, you use a point function. So the point function will bring whatever is here over there. And I'm going to take a point function, and what it wants is it needs to go to the for each. So / for each A, and then within the for each it's always 1 point, so we are going to 0. And then what is the name of the function? So the name is, the name of the attribute is rotate or ROT, and then it's a float. Okay, now nothing is going to happen because it is going from 0 to 1. That doesn't really affect degrees. But if I multiply this by say 90, you'll see a change happening. So if I come down here, I generate the ramp, there you go. So you can see it rotate. But let's say we want to go from -90 to +90. So what I can do is, let's modify this. I'm going to put it in a fit function. So we'll do a fit 01, and I'll do comma -90, comma +90. Or you can like fix in these values. So whatever, like I want to do like -60 to +90. And then the good thing about this is because you can base it on a curve, you can actually control the rotation. So see, so I can do stuff like this. So the same stuff, but we're doing it through for each. Okay, the other one that I want to cover, this will be the last thing we'll cover, is the fillet axis thing. Okay, so the fillet axis is basically the way things are arranged inside a sunflower, so that arrangement is called fillet axis. And the function for it is very specific and very simple. So it's like every point has to move out by the exact same value, but it has to spin by 137.5 degrees. Okay, so again, this is all part of the ornamental design, but I just wanted to cover something. As I said, like this is covering everything that I can think of. Okay, so how do we do that, right? So I'm going to take like these two guys, do Control C, Control V. Actually, let's take this also. But what I'll do is I'm not going to do the P scale. So instead of this, I'm going to set this to, so we wanted to move out and we also wanted to rotate. Okay, so we'll do F at, let's call it move. And we don't want a ramp at all. Okay, what we want is we wanted to move based on the point number. So we'll do at ptnum into, we'll do like an additional this thing. Okay, so we'll do ch, so I can like move it out by specific values. Let's call it shift. Okay, so this is the first one, and the rotation will also be at ptnum into 137.5. Okay, so this is specific, like this is a very botanical thing, so it has to be like 137.5. Okay, let's do one thing. It's impossible to remove those. So let's do Control C. I'll get rid of this. I'll take another angle. Yeah, okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to take an add. So we want like a single point. So I'm going to take an add and connect this. So the first thing is I want to take a transform to move it out in either axis, X or Z is fine. And then we'll take another one for rotation. So this is move and then this is rotate. Okay. And do the same thing, do a for each. So we'll do for each point. Let's just shorten the name. We'll do copy to points. Okay, I think this is good. So we have this. Now what I can do is after I've done all of this, I can just take a transform and just scale it down. Like just scale it down to 0. So the first thing is I want to move it out. So these will move out. Okay. And what I can do is if I just take the same function from here, we'll do Control C, come to move, and let's say we want to move out in the X axis. So Control V, and this will be for each B, and I believe it's called move. And if I move this, you'll get this. So every point number shifts out, by that much. Okay. And then we want to do the same thing for rotation. So if I just take the same value here, do Control C. So let's just check how we want to rotate this. So we want to rotate it in the Y axis. So do Control C and Y axis, Control V. This will be called rotate, and there you go. Now it doesn't show up with very few points, but it is happening. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to come into the line, and let's make this about 500 points. And if we zoom out, there you go. So what I can do is I can come in here and just scale it down a lot. And that's how you do it. Now another thing you can do in here is with the line, I can calculate I have calculated the curve view, so which is nice. So after this, I can do another angle and have a piece scale based on the curve view. So we'll do CH ramp and we'll call it size, at curve view. And then let's take a sphere, a tiny one, and we'll do copy to points. Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting to create this. Okay, and then let's just make it big. And there you go. So yeah, so if you're using the ornamental designs video and you want to adapt that to the newer method, you can do this, and then also make sure that you watch, like these ones. Okay, so these will be helpful. All right, so this is primarily it. I'm hoping this covers a majority of the topics. Like most of the emails that I used to get or that I still get is primarily to do with the Point SOP and the alpha node, where are all of those things now with the newer versions. And then sometimes it's like the copy stamp stuff, and things like those. So yeah, so I'm hoping this helps. Again, I'm going to send this out as an email to like everyone so they can take a look at it. And what you can also do is if you are getting stuck in some other places, of course, you can email me and I'll solve those out. But if I get like a general enough area where people are still getting stuck, I'll create like another version of this. So it'll be easier for just, everyone to get updated. Yeah, that's pretty much it.